What's up, guys? Welcome to the Mississippi Real Estate Podcast, hosted by Ryan Watson.
And I'm Tripp Spruill, where it's all about real life, real talk, and real estate.
Join us as we dive into the stories, trends, and insider tips shaping the world of Mississippi real estate.
Whether you're buying, selling, investing, or you're just curious about the market, we've got all the insights you need to navigate with confidence. So if y'all are ready, let's get real.
All right, welcome to this fresh new episode of Mississippi Real Estate Podcast. We have a very special guest today. He is very dear to my heart, and even as weird as his name is, so is this guy.
It's fair.
His name is Lake Pickle, and Lake, I'm going to tell him a little bit about you. He is a real estate agent for Open Season Properties. He is a market manager for OnX. So if you use OnX for real estate, we're going to get into that a little bit today.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome guy. He also has a podcast with his trusty co-host, Jordan Blissett, called Speak the Language, presented by Primos.
Mm-hmm.
And so, man, without further ado, what's up, Blake?
Man, I'm good. It's never had anyone like read off my different accolades while I'm sitting there. So I didn't know what to do with my hands. You know?
I think you did a little hunting too.
Yeah.
It felt a little weird doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know you so well. But.
Yeah. It is what it is.
Well, look, I know I'm super excited to get to meet you my first time, and glad that you're spending some time with us today and just kind of share your story and talk a little bit about some real estate stuff and some probably going to get down a lot of hunting roads. But
oh yeah,
well, they coincide a lot.
Yeah,
they do.
Sure.
Yeah,
I feel like we got a short time to get a lot of information out there to all our listeners.
Yep.
But we'll start out with, I'll go ahead and ask you, Lake, who is Lake Pickle? I know I've said a lot, but where are you from? What do you tell us a little bit more, elaborate on that.
Sure. I mean, if you were to just boil me down to brass tacks, I mean, I'm just a dude from Mississippi that likes to hunt and be outside as much as I can be, and that pretty much led to everything else, that I've kind of been able to do career-wise. So, grew up right around here, went to school at Mississippi State, and went straight out of Mississippi State into Primos, was there for a little over 9 years. I got into real estate kind of at the tail end of Primos, and been doing that ever since. OnX kind of happened after that. The podcast happened while I was at Primos and still going now. It all kind of just coincides. My wife says when, friends or people ask what her husband does for a living, she goes, I just don't really know what to tell him most days. I just go, he does a lot.
He's outside a lot. Yeah. He likes being in the woods.
Yeah.
Well,
How did so going to Mississippi State, what did you get your degree in?
Wildlife, well, it's a long story. So I was there I was a wildlife and forestry student.
Okay.
I'd wanted to do the outdoor industry, hunting industry thing. I'd gone to Hines Junior College for like a year and a half, and then I landed a internship for a show called Midwest Whitetail. They're still around, but back arguably they were bigger back then. Anyway, they were at the time, like now, hunting content on YouTube that's like where most of it is.
Yeah.
At the time, I got so the guy who founded Midwest Whitetail is a guy named Bill Winke. I got to give him credit for this. If there was someone before him, I don't know about him. He was the first person I knew of that was doing this whole film a hunt this week and it's on YouTube next week. So I remember buddy of mine, Keith Polk, calling me and telling me that, and I was like, "He's doing what?"
Yeah. And he was self-filming too, wasn't he?
He would do some self-filming. He started getting cameraman. That's kind of how the internship thing came to be. And so I was sitting bored out of my life in the parking lot of Hines Community College, and I hear about this internship, and I'd always wanted to do the hunting industry thing anyway. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." So I just applied, and so much of that whole story is just the Lord's timing, because when I applied, I mean, it was an internship, but they wanted you to have like some level of camera or post-production experience. I said I wish I could find that application. I said that I ran a handy cam for a duck place that I used to guide for. That was the extent of my experience. Yeah. Well, they ended up hiring me. It took them forever. I just thought they were dragging it on. Turns out there was another guy that they had hired for that internship position. He backed out at the last minute, and they ended up calling me.
Yeah.
So I moved up to Iowa for 6 months, and at that time, like I said, pre-YouTube, there's so many freelance guys these days, which is great. It's just a different time.
Yeah.
At that time, there was so many guys like me that wanted to do, the filming hunts and all that kind of stuff, but nobody had any experience.
Yeah.
So me getting to do that internship immediately put me kind of at the top of the pile because I actually had some professional experience then. So went from there back to Mississippi State, and Mississippi State was more or less because I still knew Primos was kind of a pipe dream. So I was like, if Primos doesn't work out, I'll go to school to be a, wildlife forestry guy, and I can
manage timber
or be, something. Yeah, that's what I was going for. And so I was at school. I had 3 semesters left in Mississippi State, and I was home. It was during the summers, the wildlife extravaganza when it was at the old Trademark. And I went there and I saw the Primos booth, and I saw Brad Ferris was at the booth. Back up a little bit, when I left my internship at Midwest Whitetail, one of the guys there ran into Brad Ferris at a trade show and said, "Hey, we had a kid that came through your internship program and he wants to go video for Primos." Brad was like, "Give him my email address." So I'd been emailing Brad for the whole time I was at Mississippi State, and just like checking in if he ever needed anything, any video work, anything. So I see Brad at the Primos booth, and I'm like, man, I should go, let him put a face with a name, introduce myself.
Sure. Yeah.
So going back to the weird name, that's one thing that is always
that's always helped.
I can thank my parents for it. People can forget anything else about me, but they don't forget my name.
Yeah.
So when I went to Brad and said, "Hey, I'm Lake Pickle," he's like, "You're that kid that's been videoing me about." Emailing about video, and I was like, "Yeah, that's me." And so little did I know it. Again, timing. Yeah. This was on a Sunday, the last day of the extravaganza. The week before, they had 4 other video guys at Primos leave to pursue another opportunity. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I just remember Brad acting way more interested in me than I expected. Wow. Sunday, I meet Brad, move back up to Starkville that Monday. Wednesday morning, I'm sitting in my little house in Starkville. We're watching Outdoor Channel. 9 a.m.'s early for a college student before classes start.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sitting there, and my phone rings, and my roommate's like, "Who in the world's calling you?" And I look down at my phone. I was like, "Brad Ferris." And he's like, "Brad Ferris ain't calling you." And I showed him. He goes, "You better answer that."
Better answer that one.
So Brad, we small talk for a second. He's like, He's like, basically what I'm asking is you consider taking off school for a semester, because then he tells me about the 4 video guys leaving. He's like, "I need someone to film an elk hunt in like 2 weeks." And I was like,
"I'm going elk
hunting." Yes. So I was a wildlife and forestry student. And no, I promised my mother I would finish.
Okay.
And then I actually had to go to the Primos office when it was in Florida and interview. It was the first time I met Will in person. Will said, "I'm not going to hire you if you don't promise me you don't finish your school."
Oh, there you go.
So I was far enough. I had to jump through some hoops.
Which speaks a lot of his character.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah. I can't say enough about him. But I was like, they wanted to offer me a full-time position, but I hadn't finished school, and I was like, what am I going to do? So I ended up talking to them, and they were like, they had a distance education program for situations kind of like mine, like you're in school on campus and something happens and you have a valid reason to leave. But they'd never done it for someone who's a wildlife student, because the wildlife forestry program is so hands-on. There's always labs and all that stuff. Yep. And they were like, "You've made it far enough through the program." Like there's like, if there's some certain hoops I had to jump through, they're like, "We will let you continue and finish your degree." So I finished my degrry online. I ended up I didn't graduate college till 2018.
You should have told them my lab is going to be with the Primos guys in the field.
Funny story. I had an ornithology class, study of birds.
Yeah.
And there was labs, and it would be like different things. One time the lab was spend 2 hours outside observing birds.
That's easy.
And then Excel spreadsheet of what those were. It was during the spring. And so I'm telling Will about, and I'm driving with Will to Missouri, and I tell him about this lab, and I show him the spreadsheet. He goes, "Well, that ought to be easy." So my whole my spreadsheet was like 3 barred owls, 5 long-bearded turkeys, 13 hens, 2 crows.
Yeah, there we go. That's how that works out, man. That's well, I guess that answers the question how he got in with Primos. I mean, I was more thinking that you were going to be like, I graduated, I got my degree, and I just because I was going to ask, how does one get in that? I know when I was growing up, man, everybody, my dream job would be hunting deer and doing this. And then you see people doing it, you're like, man, they're really doing it. Like they really are doing it.
Lake was that for me. I mean, when I got to see Lake just excel and what he was loving doing. I was like, man, that is so cool. That's so cool. I know him. It was really.
I mean, me and Ryan used to go duck hunting together.
Yeah.
Like,
and turkey hunting.
and everything.
That's
Yeah.
what he claims. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We did, man. We did. I mean, me and Ryan were turkey hunting when I was at Hines.
Yeah.
And like that turkey hunt, when I was at Hines, I was miserable.
We got into some best turkey hunting.
So some of the mornings I was turkey hunting, that was like the highlights of the time, because I was like, Hines was not great.
Yeah.
You're sitting there when you're sitting there at community college, not knowing what you're going to do with your life.
I was at Holmes, and I was going back and forth to Ace Hardware, working in my mom's house, and and it was like, man, I thought college was going to be, but I needed that junior college step anyway.
Dude, as miserable as I was, if I had not been at junior college, I wouldn't have been in the position to go to do that internship, and that internship opened up the door to everything.
So can I ask you a Primos question? Like, so you get in Primos, like, what was because you've been hunting, you grew up hunting like all of us do. What's the like shock and awe of like, okay, now you're with these guys and you get behind a camera and you're watching these deer, like you're up there filming deer. I think I remember one hunt where like Brad Ferris passed a deer at Cottonmouth, and you're like, "What in the world is this dude doing?" And I was like, I would be the same way. Like I'd have shot that deer, 9 times over.
Yeah.
Coming from where we come from, you know what I mean? You don't get exposure to somebody. So how was that transition?
It was a learning curve because again, you go into it like, I mean, I grew up hunting here, mostly around Central Mississippi.
Yep.
I hadn't traveled much hunting wise.
You don't see a lot like
that. Brush track buck's good,
right. So I mean, like, and so but I really, I had some confidence going in there because I had that internship in Iowa. But still, it's like the way that I could explain it is, it was a little intimidating because then all of a sudden you're elk hunting or sitting in a tree stand with Brad or Will, these guys that you've been watching. I mean, I've been watching since I was a kid, and
almost idolized as a kid, hunting and watching them.
The thing that was crazy, and they would scarf at me if they heard me say this because they're humble, but I remember, like, I couldn't put my finger on it for the longest time, but following them around or sitting in a tree with them and just watching them hunt, I was like, there's something different about it, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And what it was is, if you do something, no matter what it is, for 200 days a year with intense amount of focus, and that's literally your job, even if you love it, that's your job, you're gonna get real good at it. So like, I figured out finally, I was like, Brad, Will, I mean, they're just on another level, man. And especially when I was like in my early 20s, I was like, they're just stuff that they're doing that I'm not picking up on because they've seen it a million more times than I have.
It's like second nature to them.
And just like little tricks, like small little details, things that they would do to take extra steps to be more quiet, or routes to a different tree stand, or keying in on a certain body language from a bull elk. It's just like, you can't shortcut the amount of experience they had and how much they had seen these certain things, and they were just like good. They were just really good. And so, but then there was some. I mean, even if at Cottonmouth, right, or the first elk elk hunt I was on, I'd never seen an elk, And so the joke is,
we don't have those in Mississippi.
Yeah, they're a little bit bigger.
The first bull elk that came in, thank God it wasn't a shooter, because that footage would have been absolutely useless. Well, I mean, the biggest critter I'd ever seen is a white-tailed deer.
Sure.
And so this bull elk comes in, and it would be the white-tail equivalent of like a not even 100-inch, 2.5-year-old buck, And he comes in bugling and screaming, and I'm sitting there with that camera just like, it looked like an earthquake, But and again, same thing with like one of those deer, the countless deer I saw Brad or Will pass that I would never pass, It just took some getting used to, but it was definitely a learning curve for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. So
that's awesome.
I want to get into this too. So how a little shout out for y'all for Speak the Language podcast presented by Primos. How did you get into that? Can you talk a little bit about how you got into that?
Yeah. So this is a true story, right? We were elk hunting in Colorado, and at the place where elk hunt, there was this couple that worked up there. Great people. I mean, they're just special people. They're born in the wrong time. They should have. They lived their lives like they were born in the 1800s. Man, they're so cool. Anyway. Mike and Brenda Powell. Miss Brenda, if you killed a mule deer, an elk, or she would take the skull and she would euro it for you while you were there. So when you left,
you had it.
Yeah,
cool.
And they got to where they had to do that because like CWD transport stuff or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
But she had this big room in the shed where like all the finished stuff was. And Wilbur had killed an elk. I'd filming, and we were getting ready, and Wilbur's like, "Do you mind running down and grabbing that elk head?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, not at all." So I walked down there, and Miss Brenda's tending to her mules. I said, "Miss Brenda, can I grab Will's elk?" She's like, "Yeah, it's in." I'd never been in the room before, so I opened the door, and it's just like elk heads, mule deer heads, antelope skulls everywhere. I'm like, "Whoa," it's just like,
oh yeah.
And they all have a tag on them, so you can see a name. So I'm scanning, looking for Will's name. And I see Wilbur's elk, but I have to like step over a lot of other stuff. And so I'm stepping. I'm going to emphasize this again. True story. So I take a step and I look and I catches my eye. There's a velvet mule deer sitting there. Tag on it says Joe Rogan.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, the UFC commentator guy, this was like 2014, 2015. This is before, his podcast was big, but not like it is now.
Yeah, sure.
And so I pick up that mule deer. I'm like, Joe Rogan, that's crazy. Because I'm a big UFC fan. I'm like, that's pretty cool. I set it back down. And then I noticed there's a Cam Haines tag right next to it. I was like, that is the one. I'm like, that's cool. So then when I got back, I realized like Cam and Joe used to do this like hunt wrap up podcast every time they got back from a hunt. Yep. And I was like, dude, that's cool. And so if you go look before Joe moved to Austin on his old studio, he would always have this velvet mule deer sitting on his table.
Yep.
I held that mule deer.
Yeah, that's the one you're holding. Yeah, he has it like right in front of the camera.
Yeah. Cool. And so, but I went and found that podcast because I wanted to hear about the hunt because I'd picked up the deer.
Touch the antlers.
Yeah. So I go listen to this podcast. I'm like, man, this is cool. They're just talking about hunting and stuff. And the TV had changed so much, media had changed so much, and one of the things that I'd loved about Primos when I was a kid was watching the porch scenes when I, on the video.
That just grabs you from the get-go. Deer camp, cabin field, whatever it was.
Right. I loved it. Yeah. Well, with the way things were changing, Outdoor Channel was still big at the time. Outdoor Channel, you had serious time constraints, and so the porch scenes had pretty much gone away. Mm-hmm. And so. And that, we try to fit it. It just didn't work. And so
until YouTube came along.
Yeah, exactly. So my wheels start spinning when I hear this like hunt. I listen to that Joe and Cam podcast, and I start seeing these few other hunting podcasts that are out at the time, and I was just like, Primos Porch Scenes, Primos podcast. That's how you bring the whole vibe back. And so that's where the idea came from.
That's cool, man. That's a great story.
That's
really cool. So, for sure.
That is pretty cool. And I watched Joe Rogan stuff too. And a lot of people would talk about how an effect or how big of an impact him having the president on there was for 3 hours. I think that was the first time any president had ever sat down with anybody for 3 hours with not editing anything. But
I got to give y'all a shout out too and bring that porch scene back there because the way that y'all did it with the younger version of Will Primos and then leading in, and then the music scene behind it.
Oh yeah,
I was more excited to see the beginning. I think you were on the tractor, I guess, plowing the field or something. We had the drone. I love that intro. Cool. It's one of the best hunting intros in my opinion.
Well, I appreciate it, man. It's like obviously like I'm not with Primos at a full-time capacity anymore, but man, those guys, Will, Jimmy, Brad, Jordan, Troy, they're still like family to me. And it's like, it's one of those deals where it's like, I like my life now. I love my life now, but I look back at those Primos days, very, very endearingly. Those are some
well, it sort of forms you in your career, right? Yeah. Speak the language came off with that, which is another tagline. For the calls and this podcast and all that.
Great marketing with that, every bit of it. It's still enduring today.
Oh yeah, I've probably watched those videos over and over. Right before deer season, after dove season, go with deer season, I'm like, I got to get excited, so I'm gonna rewatch some videos.
So let's talk a little bit about how you got into real estate. How did real estate fall in with all that?
Yeah.
Was that right after you kind of started doing podcast stuff, or how did...
Kind of, sort of. So I just, full honesty, so Primos, like I said, I'm not at Primos at full capacity anymore.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things started changing at Primos.
Mm-hmm.
Things were changing, like, so they weren't privately owned anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That changed things up.
Bushnell, maybe? Is it Bushnell?
It was Bushnell. Man, it changed so many times. It was hard for me to
Okay.
keep up. But like, it was like Bushnell had
That's one
them,
of
and then
them.
someone bought Bushnell. So it was
okay,
a
yeah,
whole
yeah.
thing. But so just everything was changing, and not in the most positive way. And so I had started thinking about like I mean, we just didn't know because of the way that corporate, the corporation that owned Primos was running things. You just they were such a wild card. You didn't know what they were gonna do.
Yeah.
Like one day I remember showing up at the office during the summertime was the most time we spent at the office because we weren't hunting anything.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember showing up at the office and they'd laid like 20 people off. Like
Ooh.
some dude flew down
wow.
from corporate and just gone.
Start taking people out.
Right.
Bye.
And it was like, and everyone was like, and myself too, it's like the video side of Primos was so keystone to the brand. I didn't really think anything would happen, but at the same time, I was like, I ain't trying to get the rug pulled out from under my feet.
Sure.
Yeah.
And Will Primos and Brad Ferris being the kind of guys that they are, Brad had been in real estate for several years at that point. They were the ones that were like, hey, even if this Primos thing keeps going, it ain't a bad idea for you to get your license, man. And,
Well, you're in it every day.
right. And so
I'll tell you all the time, once you got it, you got it.
Yeah.
You can put it on inactive status if you're not using it. That was one thing that really spoke a lot for me is, hey, if I work hard, get this thing, didn't mean to cut you off, but then you can put it on inactive if you're not using it or whatever. If the market's just terrible and you don't want to do it right now, you can do something else. But anyways,
no, yeah, but I did it. It was I did it all online because when I got it, there was no in-person classes because that was kind of it wasn't right during 2020, I don't think, but it was close enough to COVID where people were still freaked out.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh,
And so I did it like I would go to the office, I'd get off at 5, and I would drive home, which I was living. We had left Cottonmouth, and we had leased this place near Chula, Mississippi. So I was working till 5, driving an hour to get home, and then I was staying up till 10 every night doing that real estate class online.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, and thank you, by the way, to me, because whenever I was going through the school, and Lake sent me all his study material.
I
forgot you did that.
I forgot.
just remembered
I did,
that.
yeah.
Thank you for that.
No, yeah, I forgot I did
So
that.
the online class is something you did online too, right?
I did online.
So
I
we
did
all-
everything because I'm slow.
So we all have that in common. So how was your experience with that? Because I can tell you mine real quick. I started out of the gate. I was like, man, I'm doing good. And you have like 6 months to take the thing or whatever. And then I plateaued.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I got a pop-up reminder like, oh, I got to take this test.
Yeah.
And boy, I was in cram mode like in college like you've never seen before. And I luckily passed the state, the national, and I was like, whew, let's go. So
it's been long enough now. I don't remember exactly how it went. I remember the process of going through the course was pretty much identical to what you just said.
So
coming out the gate, I was like, I'm going to knock this thing out.
I'll get it done like this.
And then like one day there was like a Saturday coming up, and I was like, I ain't gonna do anything on Saturday. I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna get some coffee, and I'm gonna knock this thing out.
Yeah.
And I was at the camp, and it was during the summer, and Jordan showed up at the camp, and I was like, what are you doing here? He showed up at like 9 a.m. He's like, I'm going fishing, and I was like,
Yeah, me too.
I stayed in,
Oh, okay.
but I might as well have gone fishing because
Yeah.
all I did was stare at the computer and just think about how many fish Jordan was catching.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway,
Yeah.
I finished it, but yeah, very
probably
much
wearing 'em
like
out,
start
right?
hot and plateau.
What I'm trying to tell all these would-be realtors, if you're interested, to get in and maybe
Yeah.
go to the classroom setting. It can
Look,
keep you.
dude,
It is an
Grounded.
eye-opener.
If I had even like I took the online route because they weren't offering in person.
Yeah.
Even at the time, like before I experienced online, I would have taken in person given the opportunity.
Well, I took the online route because I was still in corporate world,
Mhm.
working, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, whatever. And I was like, I got to do this at night.
I'll tell you how slow
But I should have taken a night class.
I'll tell you how slow I was. So I did the in-class training, failed it,
Oh boy.
couldn't even take the. I mean, and I'm just telling off on myself right now.
Yeah, you are.
Failed it, but hey, that just means it's finally set in.
That's right.
I got it on. Then I did the online stuff. And I probably failed it a couple
Oh
times.
my
but
gosh.
It was a lot. It was a lot.
It is, but you get to.
But I finally made it there. When you get there, you're just like, yes, I
Yeah.
got it. And then all of a sudden, you're like, now what?
But you would agree too. You get because you're in the world, you're, I mean, even land, but like you get your knowledge, boots on the ground, doing the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I couldn't pass those tests right now if I wanted to.
No, I
I
couldn't
wouldn't
either.
want to either.
No,
We'll go back.
so they was like, what
might
was the
do pretty
process?
good.
You finish the online class, then you got to submit it, and then they got to accept you, and then you can schedule your test.
Yeah.
So I finished, like, my entire goal. The summer started, I was like, I have got to take this test. Not like, I mean, like the test, where do you go to the testing center?
Yeah.
I've got to have that done before I leave for elk season.
Yeah.
Have to. So I finished my online stuff with, like, I want to say a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And I submitted it, and they basically, like, I got my clearance to go take the test when I was on my way to go elk hunting.
Oh,
And
wow. Oh,
so
wow.
then I had a whole month of not, because that's what I was scared of. I was like,
Oh,
man, if I have
gosh.
that dude.
Yeah, because you got to.
So I get back home, and I'm like, all right. And so I take some time in October, and I try to study. I'm like, all right, I got to get back. I got to get back.
A little refresher.
I stayed up till 3 something a.m.
Mm.
and then went to the testing center and took the test. And I remember when I did the national one, I felt good.
Yeah.
When I got to the state one, it was the last question. I was like, I don't know. But I hit submit, and it like loaded.
It takes too long for that.
It said pass. I was like, so I walk outside,
Thank
and the lady sitting at the desk, she goes, "You passed both of them." I said, "I saw." She goes, "You want to know how close you were?" I said,
Nope.
I just walked out. Like, give my license. I don't want to.
They don't ask
I
you how
passed.
close you
I
were.
don't
need to
care.
pass.
I just cross that line. I don't care how
That's
close
right.
it was.
That's exactly right. So we passed the license.
Yeah.
Everybody's happy.
So how did
Yeah.
this all? So real estate. I know you've been doing good with real estate. How did all this lead to? I want to get into Onyx. Talk a little bit briefly about Onyx. So you're the marketing. What did you say?
Marketing manager.
Marketing manager.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So you're the marketing manager. Like, what does your day look like with Onyx? And by the way, I want to say I use Onyx all the time.
Me too.
I love it. I use it. Not even just for hunting, but for everything. It's great.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit how that kind of all ended.
Man,
Onyx.
again, like it
Primos.
all kind of just coincides, man. Because like things were changed at Primos. That's what originally was the motivation for me getting my real estate license. Well, things were continuing to change. Real estate, which I had no idea. I stepped into real estate like right when the market was going crazy over COVID. So I was like, this is great. You know, I was like, is this, man? I was like, man, is it always this easy?
No.
It's not.
No.
Still worth doing. But yeah, it was like, I mean, you know, I jumped into a buffet line, you know, but
man.
Anyway.
I got a question to circle back, but keep going.
Sure.
Sorry.
Did
I skip over?
No. It's just he reminded me.
So real estate's doing well. I'm enjoying it. And like it's Primos, I'm still at Primos, but I mean stuff's just changing. Onyx Hunt was a sponsor of Primos, had been a sponsor for I'm gonna say like maybe 2 years, and so we had a relationship with them. And the way we kind of handled the video team, you know, there was a couple of us there, me, Jordan, Troy. We all were like divided up different sponsors to deal with, you know, because so we keep the relationship. Hey, what do we need? What do you need? Photos, just that sort of thing. And so I was dealing with Onyx, and knew those guys had been using Onyx since before they even sponsored us. So I was just very familiar with it. And they just approached me in 2022, and were like, "Hey, there's a job opening coming up. We know that you've been running social media and some of that digital marketing stuff for Primos. You know, would just be interested in applying for it." I was like, yeah, I mean, maybe. I originally, I mean, I was like, I entertained it, but not. But in the back of my head, I was like, I'll never leave Primos, you know?
Yeah, sure.
But then they sent some stuff over for me to look over. I was dating Lacey, who's my wife now, and at the at the time, and it's kind of one of those you can't see the forest for the trees kind of things. It's like I had been doing that crazy sporadic home 2 days, gone 20-something days. I've been doing that since I was 21 years old. And
that changes when you're married.
Yeah.
And
so Lacey had already started. We weren't married yet, but we were talking about getting married.
Yeah.
You're thinking about
she wasn't like, you must take this job, but she had kind of softly brought it up. She's like, hey, might not be the worst thing. And I started looking at it, and I was like, because I was just so like, man, that's nice they offered it, but I'm not leaving Primos,
Yeah.
And I started thinking about it, started talking to some folks I trusted, and then I ended up, here's another Primo story. I called Brad Ferris because, Brad was kind of how all this started for me. And Brad was like, man, I don't want you to leave, but that's a good offer. He's like, I'm not telling you what to do, but don't be closed off to it.
Yeah.
And so then I knew what I had to do. So I called Will. I went to Will's house. I knew what Will was going to tell me, but I just needed to hear him say it.
Yeah,
So here's another Will Primo story for you. Will's one of my favorite people on this planet. There's people that like don't want you to win. There's people that are okay if you win. Then there's people that want to help facilitate you win. They want to see you succeed. That's Will Primo.
That's awesome.
So I went to Will's house, sat on his couch, and started telling him what was going on. And then started crying like a little 12-year-old who just got his ball taken away.
Yeah.
And Will was like, Lake, I'm not going to let you stay at Primos.
Oh, wow.
He's like, he's like, this is way too good of an opportunity for you.
Yeah.
The writing's kind of on the wall where things are headed. You have to take this job.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. So that's kind of how that happened. And like I said, I went elk hunting with the Primos guys this September. Like we're still tight. It's different. Obviously it's different. And that took some adjusting too, because I've been so used to that for, like I said, I was there almost a decade, but I'll be at Onyx will be 3 years in April.
That moves fast, man. All that stuff.
Yeah.
What would you say about the thing I want to circle back on is because you've got Primos, you got Primos Speak the Language, you've got real estate, and you've got Onyx. And so I've been told throughout. So for me, I'm an independent insurance agent too. And so I couple like insurance with real estate. If I sell a house, a lot of times I insure it too. So it's kind of a cool gig.
Yeah.
But also having properties me and my wife started investing in. We've been investing in single family rentals for 7-8 years. And I started out with a commercial job. Everybody's like, man, and I agree to some extent that you can go, a lot of people say you need to go all in on real estate to make it successful. But I also feel like you can have dual career roles if you have the flexibility. So what would you say to people that like with your real estate know-how and experience now, like because you've got multiple roles, you're burning the candle at both ends.
Sure.
How do you feel about that? Because I think you can do it, and there's others just like real estate only.
Man, so I never really just gave much thought to doing one more avenue or having multiple kind of occupations until the whole real estate thing happened.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, it kind of happened out of necessity. It happened because Brad and Will were encouraging me to do so. And when that happened, which I say the recreational land thing, because I don't really do much recreational. Residential. Just not my avenue.
Yeah.
But talking about selling, recreational hunting land, timberland, farmland, that sort of stuff, it's like it coupled so well with what I was already spending my time doing. That just opened my eyes, man. It's just kind of like a light bulb. I was like, oh, it's not like if I was trying to do Primos and start a band at the same time, that probably wouldn't go together. But it keeps me busy doing all those things, but it's all things that I like doing. And they complement one another.
Sure.
Primos, Onyx, recreational real estate, the podcast, they all work off one another. And I'd be lying through my teeth if I said I orchestrated it that way on purpose. It all just kind of happened. Yeah. I look for more opportunities like that now. Has stuff just kind of fell into place. But yeah, man, I think if obviously you got to be willing to work a little bit, right?
Sure.
But no, and maybe for some people, the best avenue for them is to be just real estate, but that's like being willing to do other things that to complement one another. That's worked really well for me.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I did the same thing. Like I didn't ever think that I'm going out choosing all these avenues.
Yeah.
It just kind of came to be as, kind of my, career story unfolded. And if I would say to any new real estate agents coming in and they have something they enjoy doing, as long as I agree with you, as long as they're not too far off the spectrum and you got the flexibility, I would say embrace it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard work in real estate, whether you're real estate only or you've got another gig. You've got multiple things and you do. So we got 3 people here saying it can be done.
Yeah.
Sure.
Coming back around to real estate, how's the land world these days with real estate.
Well, how was
Are
it
people
in
buying?
COVID, and how does it
that's a good
transfer
question.
now?
That's a good question.
I mean,
we see the price per acre, and I'm like, oh, well, you know.
Yeah. Well, the difference is like when I stepped into it at COVID, I like no one knew what, it's different looking at COVID retrospectively, right?
Yeah.
From a lot of different angles.
Yes.
But when I stepped into that from a real estate point of view, I thought that was normal,
Yeah.
Same.
And man, I'm, going through the process. I got my license. I send some mailers out, and like my phone just starts dinging. People want me to list their property, and I'm like, man. And again, I'm like, oh, this is easy. You know, the first property I ever sold, I listed it off of a mail out that I sent, and then I had to wait because I'd like sent mailers out, ordered. I did that all at the same time, and so I was waiting for my signs to come in. So I drove from Chula, where I was living at that Primos camp, to like Morton, nailed that sign into the ground, drove back to Chula. But I'm pulling into the camp, and my phone rings like, I want to make an offer on this place. I'm like, let me just turn this truck around, And
just came from this
it doesn't matter. I'm going back.
For sure.
That's cool.
But it definitely, like, I learned, like, it's not, and I just, again, just timing and all that. Like, I learned real quickly that it's not the normal for you to get 10 listings off of
put a sign, then have an offer,
and put a sign up, or put it out there to be advertised, and it's contracted in 4 days. Like, that's not. I mean, that does happen.
Yeah,
but that's not how it always happens.
So
happened to me last week, by the way.
Oh,
it really did.
3 days.
We were joking about it, and then it happened. I was like, "Oh wow, you actually did sell it that quickly."
That's cool.
So it seems like it's similar to residential, because I came in right before, and it was like a hard market to buy and sell, and then COVID hit, and it was like hair on fire, and I'm like, yeah, this is way better. But then if you had a buyer, it was frustrating because you had to compete with all the other buyers. But if you had the listing, it was like, money. Like, this is great. I've got so many. But then you got, some people got burned out on how they cutting off contracts and all. I mean, it was weird. It was a crazy time. We said this in the last podcast. COVID era will be talked about for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
But we're starting to see the other side of it now, and everything is still a seller's market for residential. The inventory is still super low. I wouldn't say super low, but it's still low, so it's still driving, seller's market. It seems like in COVID, the land was kind of similar to residential. How do you see it now? Like, is it cooling off a little bit? We obviously have houses sitting longer.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's not like dead by any stretch, but if you compare that to, like I said, the peak of the COVID craziness, it is a different world.
Real estate will humble you quickly in this business.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, again, honestly, going back to thankfully I wasn't trying to do just that. I had the other stuff going on, because it was like, for me with COVID, it was like a hard transition. It wasn't like gradual. It was all of a sudden like, oh, I got to think about another way to get listings, or I've got to market these a little bit. It was a very abrupt transition. Yeah. Which a lot of it had to do with, like, those interest rates spiked, and then it just,
what are the land interest rates? What's Southern Ag at right now? If you go to you kind of, we know houses is, we're still hovering like maybe 6.7 to 7.2 is kind of the fluctuation.
It's not going to be that far off.
It's not that
honestly.
Far,
I wish it wasn't that way.
But on a $3.2 million property, it changes the game a little bit.
Big time. Yeah. We ain't got no 2 interest rates and 3 interest rates anymore.
Yeah. So how did you come to be with Open Season? Talk about them a little bit.
Yeah. So I had been with a bigger brokerage starting out, and they, they gave me a starting point. I appreciate them 100%. But they were moving towards, like, they wanted all their agents to be, this is what you do and nothing else.
100%, yeah.
And I was like, that's fine. That's just not what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And so Open Seasons had started, and they were local. I knew at the time, we've grown so much since then, but at the time I literally knew everyone working there.
Yeah.
We were friends, knew them well, knew they were good folks, and it just was like, it was a good fit,
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's nice because, again, like, most of the folks, or a lot of the folks at Open Seasons, have multiple avenues which they operate.
That's good. Yeah. So they support that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Deal.
Yeah.
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 That's awesome.
I like working working for local companies. It's just
Oh, yeah.
because that was one thing that I did run into where I worked before. It was just kind of like they had some like pretty rigid stipulations, like how you did artwork for advertisements and stuff. And I was like, dude, I'm not gonna advertise myself and then you can clearly, I mean, that looks like I'm at a cornfield in the Midwest. Like, that's not like, I'm like, why would I send that to anybody? Like, they'd be like, this isn't Mississippi.
Right.
Whereas like working there, like there's pretty much freedom to do. I mean, there's guidelines, obviously.
More pine trees.
Right. I mean, you can, it's more, it feels more authentic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure.
Because it is authentic because they're local, right?
That's one thing going back to the hunt side. I always watch these shows and I'm like, man, I wish I could hunt in a standing cornfield like that. Our corn's already picked and cut, you know what I mean? Like by the time you get to any of that stuff. So that kind of placates off the same thing.
Well, I think that'll kind of segue us into something else, and I don't think we don't have too much more time today. I know you got to be somewhere, but let's talk about hunting.
Oh,
how was your I know you ready to talk about hunting? How was your 24-25 season?
Well, I already heard a podcast where he said he was going to do some damage to some deer hunting, and he ended up duck hunting more.
I did not do that. Yeah, dude. Well, because elk season did not go my way. I carried a bow. I'd missed a bull elk the season before, and so I'd never practiced more hard for archery in my life, and I'd never felt more prepared. And then just the way it unfolded with the camera.
Started flying and
no, I'm talking about elk still. Like I elk hunted like carrying the bow for a day and a half, and that's pretty tall order, even on some good places. So I just didn't. So I was just kind of left like I didn't even get to try.
It's
really.
Not automatic.
No,
people, I think that's something with people forget. You may be there for weeks before you get the footage you need.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the prime spots.
Yeah.
Deer and elk will go on just, where the heck are these things at?
Dude, we hunted a place that Primos has hunted for, even before I got there. They'd been hunting there for like 20 years, and we struggled this year. It was just different, And so I get into early deer season.
I think I heard a podcast you talking about that a little bit.
Probably.
on speaking language.
Probably. But it gets to deer season, I'm like, I'm about to take all of this archery practice out on these does. First doe of the year comes in at like 20 yards, and I'm like, draw back. I shoot, and 20 yards, it happens fast.
Like, you're waiting on that thump.
I watched the arrow go like way over the doe, and I'm like,
what
I'm like, it's 20. She was like 20 yards, and as soon as I look, and I had this sight that you can roll to adjust, and I'd been shooting at like 50. So my 20 was at 50 yards, and I was like,
you were a touch high.
That's what happened.
I told Jordan, I was like, my left and right was perfect.
Oh yeah,
just our altitude. But I shot one doe with my bow, and then duck season started.
Chasing ducks.
I like birds. Man.
I gotta
get him into duck.
So
turkey hunting for that matter.
Yeah. All right. I'll say, since you outed me on it, you said you weren't.
I forgot. I forgot I said that.
I grew up hardcore. I cut my teeth on deer hunting.
Yeah.
Dove hunting, deer hunting. Yeah. So dove season was always a precursor to deer hunting.
Yeah. And
I had buddies as I was growing up. They just started breaking off to ducks and turkeys. And I started like, man, that sounds pretty cool. So I started at early high school age. I got a box call and a couple of, diaphragm, mouth calls. And I was like, man, I just could not figure that crap out. And then during spring, I was heavy into baseball. Mm-hmm. And so I just didn't have the opportunity. And then I grew up into adult, fast forward later. And I have been turkey hunting. I've had a couple of my buddies that would take me here and there when I would accept the offer to go. And I have been in the woods where they're hammering and they're drumming. And I even the closest I ever got to one was I thought they were coming down this funnel, and that joker popped up on the side of the ridge, and we're like, uh-oh.
Yep, sounds like
and
a turkey.
And he was gone. And my buddy's like, man, how'd you think? I was like, man, it was fun, but I'm still just good. Yeah. I put all my time and effort into deer. Yeah. And then now I have kids, fast forward, right? Yeah. So my son actually here lately is like, Dad, he's starting to get
beautiful deer this year.
He killed a good 8-point. Yeah. Deer. He got his first rut and buck experience. All the deer he's killed so far have been in fields. And he got his first rut and buck experience pushing 2 does in, and it was hectic. I wish I had a video camera of that because it was hectic and roller coaster of emotions, and I can tell that story later. But anyway, but he's starting starting to show interest. He wants to try to turkey hunt. I'm like, I'm not the dad.
Dude, look, I had a similar situation. I didn't come from a turkey hunting family.
Yeah.
Like I had buddies around that talked about it, and then I happened to watch a dude doing a seminar at a Bass Pro Shops in Memphis. He had a turkey video playing. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And I just started poking around asking if I could go turkey hunting. But my dad was like, I ain't the one to. I mean, my dad did take me, but even I was like 10, and he was like, Lake, look, we gonna go out there and we gonna try, but
it's not easy.
I don't know what I'm doing.
It's not an easy thing to do. Now I do get the appeal and the chase, and there's an art to it. I get that.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. My inner being, my desire is deer. I love playing the food plots. I love bow hunting too. I've had similar stories where I don't even shoot those. I shoot pins. I go into back pins after that.
He invited me out to their place this year, and we get out there, and I'm sitting there, and I've got just deer all out in front of me in the food plot, and waiting on old monster buck to come out, and I hear this ruffling around over here, and of course, you know what's coming is some turkeys. Here comes some hens just in a line right out there in the food plot.
About 15 of them.
My next text was like, "We going turkey hunting this year?"
That's gonna be as good. He was like, "Hey, since you don't turkey hunt,
the funny thing.
I don't know, man.
We had that conversation with Adam Black. We had that conversation with Adam Black, and we kind of said the same thing. He's like, well, if you're not going to go, and I've had that offer extended to me. If you're not going turkey hunting, do you care? I don't care.
I'm sure. Because it was funny. We had a guy down one time from Minnesota, and we were trying to film some stuff, and he wanted to get some like turkey photography and videos for his packaging. But this was like back in Primo stuff, and he said, I'll never forget it. He said, "You got any urban woodlots where we could go just film some turkeys that don't get messed with?" And I said, "Do we have any what?"
Do we? No.
And I said, "What?" He said, "You have any urban woodlots?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like, what are you? You're speaking English, but I'm not comprehending." He was like, "I was like, what is an urban woodlot?" He was like, like just a chunk of woods near a city or something.
Land?
And he was like, he said a chunk of woods like right near a city that nobody hunts. Is like, I mean, yeah, we have some of those, but ain't gonna be no turkeys in there. And he's like, well, we need to find some turkeys that aren't messed with so we can really get some good photos.
We're in Mississippi.
I told him, I said,
these Easterns are crazy.
I said, listen to me. If there is a goblin turkey in Mississippi, somebody's hunting it.
Somebody's messing with it.
Like, that don't exist.
No.
I had one of them jokers come on me
smarter.
January. I was hunting the Enda. We were kind of lagging out of rut. It was cold, and I was hunting this pine thicket by a swamp area or whatever. And I got to hearing something just tearing out. I'm like, is that a turkey goblin? It got to be closer. And I'm like, this thing comes in full strut 20 yards. I got a 270 rifle, and I'm like, you're not supposed to be doing that, and you're blowing up my deer with like, will you hush, please?
Calm down.
Yeah.
Running my deer off.
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe one day I'll chase one, but more than that. That's the same thing with ducks,
I mean, for me, turkeys is what hooked me. Yeah. And then I already liked duck hunting. And then honestly, like I said, I was at Primos for over 9 years, and we were deer hunting at least 100 days a year, morning and afternoon.
Sure.
And I just I still go, but like if
true or false, will elk hunting run you off the deer hunting?
Oh yeah.
I have a buddy of mine that I actually sell insurance with, and ever since he started pulling tags going elk hunting, he get almost. It's like deer hunting. Like maybe I'll go the last couple weekends.
Now I'll say this. I mean, late season rifle hunts for elk, they're still fun. Yeah. Like I still go. I would go on them. I have gone on them.
Yeah.
But talking about, I might get into some debate in there. Like, do I want to do? But if it's a like bugling archery hunt, like I'm gonna pick that one every time.
Yeah. Well, I will say elk meat is delicious.
Oh, it's good. It's great.
Way better than. Yeah. I hate to say way better than deer, but it is.
No, it definitely is.
Deer. And I think dove's better than duck. So,
well, you gotta know how to cook duck, right?
Both are good. Both are good.
Yeah, you gotta know how to cook duck. You gotta eat duck.
And it depends. If someone might have fed you a merganser.
I don't know which one. I don't know which one I've had.
A teal and a merganser.
I will say a buddy of mine, Brad Turner, a guy I've been hunting with forever, but a good friend of mine. I think him and Jordan actually leased some land in Brandon together.
Probably.
Trick Bridge Road.
Probably.
He came up last week in our deer season and made a stew, and he threw some duck in there. But before he did, he let me try it. Now that was good duck. Yeah. I don't know what it was, but it was better than what the first duck I ever had.
I tell people, if there was this is my opinion, if you took like a group of animals, like if you were like, deer, venison, upland birds I think waterfowl as a group
Yeah.
gets the most commonly like drugged through the mud or like, they don't taste good. And I could not disagree more.
Yeah. I think it is right on the cooking part. And I think I just had somebody didn't really know what they're doing.
Well, that's anything, right?
If you ever
People,
eat a speckleback
Well, if you
goose,
overcook deer meat, it's going to taste bad.
if I get
You know?
the best Wagyu steak and take it home and cook it to 170 degrees internal, you're going to be like, this is shoe leather, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Just know the meat you're cooking.
Because that's what everybody says when someone says, well, you got to cook it right. But like, I don't want to have to worry about that. I'm like, if I make that example, I'm like, I could ruin the best steak in the world if I don't cook it right.
Well, that's true.
That's right. Yeah.
I gotta go off. I gotta ask another question. Oh, I heard a podcast on.
We got
when y'all were
just a couple more minutes.
when y'all were phone bleating does.
Failed.
I've had that work so many times for me.
Yeah.
Now I don't do it so much in a deer stand, but I remember one time me and my buddy were up at camp and we just got done rolling food plots and we were late. We were like, it was in deer season, like the first week. And
Yeah.
we were up there and putting the equipment away, but we were in a spot where we actually have food plots close, and we call it our headquarters, a hub, and then we'll keep the tractors there until we're done and take them back to camp. Anyway, I had that thing with me for some reason, and my buddy said the same thing. Damn, them things don't work. I said, watch this. And we cracked a couple of Coors Lights, and I said, give it about 5 minutes, just calm down.
Yeah.
And I got to wailing on that thing. And, dude, we had does coming out the bottom, coming out here. And I've been in the woods when I've done it. I just feel bad pulling back on them. You have to be ready for them to come in. But I would say early season, because I got to laughing at y'all's podcast. And y'all like, we just blew the woods up.
Oh, we failed. But
I just felt bad. I feel bad. Like, I do it just to show it could work and show other people how quick they'll come in. But man, I've been in the woods where I've done it. And I'm like, I can't shoot her doing this. She may have a phone somewhere.
See, but that's what. My buddy told me that, and he was like, "Man, I've thought about doing that so many times because it looks fun." He goes, "But I just think about she probably got a phone somewhere." I'm like, "Dude, I hear you, but the deer program coordinator for the state is the one telling me to go do this.
Go do it."
Yeah, he's the one who gave me the idea. Yeah. He was like, "Man, that's how we hunt them every early season." I'm like, really?
Yeah. I heard that video and I was like, man, I've done that so many times. I was like, I gotta tell Lake, like I've had it work. That's probably out of all the calls, I've grunted a few in. I've had I think it's harder in Mississippi, especially if you're in deer camp mode, to like rattle a deer.
I heard one do it.
But that bleat.
Yeah, I heard one do it when I was out at your place this season. And there's probably 4 or 5 does out here, a couple young does, and one of them made that you can't miss the sound of it.
No.
And, and then here comes 2 deer. This little Spike was out there and, trying to be all buff and everything. His daddy wasn't around. And him and a doe, and they both of them immediately, they heard it, and both of them ran straight that way, went right up the hill over to the rest of the deer. It was really cool to watch and how that worked in that instance too. I mean, even then. But,
well, they speak the language. That's what I said. They talk to each other.
That's right.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? They really do.
They do.
So did you have a successful, would you say your overall 24, 25 season successful?
Yeah.
Lots of duck.
For the weird weather, odd migration, I was happy with the season that I had.
That's awesome.
Took my wife a lot. Lacey's like, a lot of folks when I say I'm taking my wife
down this year.
But also, like, when I tell people I'm taking my wife duck hunting, they're just like automatically imagining me like having to drag her out of the bed and really convince her to go. Like, no, she's like, wants to go.
And that's good, man, because my wife's like that. Till the kid, I just turned into a glorified guide now. My kids and I love that part too. But my wife, if we get a chance, she'll go with me. She's killed deer. When we started dating and got married, she killed deer with me, and she likes going to deer camping, man. I'm thankful for that. You got the same thing, and your partner sounds like,
it's fun.
It's fun on a different level.
Yeah, it really is. It's a lot of fun taking her, especially when. I mean, she likes the dogs a lot, so she likes getting to go with the dog, and it is fun. She doesn't enjoy it, but when I could tell she was like really into it, she had Mallard come in and she missed it, and she got so mad. She was just over there fuming. I was like, well, I guess she really does like it if she's that upset about missing one.
Talking about dogs, how old is Knox now? How old's your dog?
He'll be 7 in April.
7 in April.
Yeah.
Man.
Still in that, he's still good.
He's still doing good.
Yeah, still in that prime range. I got one more year before I got to think about him slowing down, I think.
Yeah.
But
my dog, old Gus, he's done got up in age, and we had to retire him, but he still has that urge to go.
So, do you ever get any? And I mean, you're big in the hunting world around here. Do you ever get any? Do you ever hear like bow hunters and deer hunters talk? You know, there's a big push and shove with the dog community on the dog running and stuff. And then the pushback is, I think what I've heard and what I've followed is, if you stop running dogs with deer, then how you gonna take, the deer guys are gonna say, well, then you can't rabbit hunt or squirrel hunt or duck hunt with them things. And so, what's your take on the old dog running scene? And because a lot of people in Mississippi I cut my teeth growing up dog running. I still hunt 100%, and I don't even mess with them no more.
No, we don't even.
I have probably the more unpopular opinion.
No, it's probably a long line of ours.
It's
mine now.
Well, they don't bother me, man.
Oh yeah.
I grew up with a positive view of dog hunters. We didn't dog hunt a lot.
Yeah. You got some experience with it though.
Yeah. And then we also had and it was just the culture, like where I grew up hunting. These guys that still had dogs, and when it became time, like when they were running their dogs, they were like, hey, if they're about to run their dogs to get ready, they might push something on us. And so we always had this positive view, Yeah. Now, obviously, you hear there's some stories that some of them, the guy who owns the dog, the handler, could have done a better job. There's stories like that for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm not, and even like I said, I could not. The last time I was on a deer drive with dogs, or anywhere involved in one, I would have been early teens. Yeah, so it's not like I'm actively doing it, but I don't want to see those guys get wiped out. Yeah. Like I think
I would say it's naturally kind of like you see it more in North Mississippi. I don't know about the Delta. I don't think there's many that do it in the Delta. But
more rabbit hunting, I think. And
we've got a big dogs and stuff. Yeah, rabbit hunting, but around our club we've got a big dog running club that kind of comes close to us. And
we're out there that one weekend. We heard dogs barking.
Ran right behind
trucks went flying by, that whole thing, and and you heard a boom.
Yeah. So they get the good, bad, and ugly. I just thought it'd be interesting to hear your take on it. I don't know, man. I've enjoyed it when I grew up doing it, and when I learned to still hunt, and then our club got away from that, there was no doubt in my mind. I don't think you would ever be able to tell me otherwise that we started seeing not only more deer, killing more deer, but also just the quality and like the deer staying there.
And like I said, I get both sides of it. Yeah. I do. Like I understand why some people get disgruntled. I mean, I know guys that have places that they spend a lot of time and money working on, and they have a guy close to them that does not handle himself or his dogs correctly, and he is a thorn in their side. So, I mean, there's both sides of it. I'm just saying, I also know guys that do it right.
Yep.
And I want those guys to be able to continue to do that, because that's what they love to do. They love running their dogs the same way that I like yelping at a turkey, or Ryan likes quacking at a duck.
There's an art to that too, and those guys spend a lot of money on the dogs, and there's an association for that, just like there is turkey federations and the duck unlimited, and there's a place for that. I agree. I just hunting. Everybody can, like, especially people who don't hunt or involved with outdoors, they can pick apart anything.
Yeah.
I mean, really. So I will say too, real quick before we get off here, I was using Hunt Stand before I got into Onyx, and Onyx changed my life.
Yeah.
And Onyx, so it's I mean, nothing against Hunt Stand, but I just found Onyx to be more user friendly.
Good.
Right, like really good on the mapping.
Yeah.
And then when I got into real estate, I was like, man, I use it now.
I use it on a daily basis.
Residential and everything else. So y'all keep up the good work.
Yeah, if you're a real estate agent and you're listening to this, y'all check out Onyx. It's pretty amazing if you don't know about it. I mean, a lot of people are using it these days, real estate agents. But it's really a great tool, especially if you need to know where property line. I just used it the other day. I went out, had 100 acres that we had listed, and I was going to show it, and I was able to look and see where the property lines were and not cross over on somebody. All those things, y'all, it's just very helpful. You also find out what's next door to you, or next door to the property that you're looking at. So very valuable tool. Give them a shout out. Lake Pickle with Open Season Properties. All the things, y'all go listen to his podcast, Speak the Language. It's really awesome. And y'all will get a lot of, especially if you love the outdoors and love hunting, I mean, all things outdoors and hunting. They talk about it on there. This last one, they were talking about some turkey hunting because turkey season's getting ready.
Yeah.
Y'all go back and listen to that one if you hadn't heard it.
I'll be going planting over sowing clover, and everybody's like, "You going turkey hunting?" I'm like, "No, I'm getting deer some off season."
I'm taking a break. Yeah.
Tell them where they can find you, man.
Yeah, man.
Before we get out of here.
Well, if they're looking for just me, like I mentioned earlier with the name, if you type in Lake Pickle, you'll find me. Yeah. And then the Open Season Properties website, Speak the Language is on all the podcast platforms. Onyx Hunt is, if you look up, that's the only thing that can get confusing is Onyx has 4 different verticals now. So you'd have to look, which if you searched Onyx, you would find Hunt eventually, but the one that gets used for real estate the most, and the one that I work on is Onyx Hunt.
Okay.
Because there's also Onyx Backcountry, Onyx Off-Road, Onyx Fish. There's
I probably could have been more specific with that. But
no, I mean they all, like I said,
out there.
I mean, all of them pay my bills. So
yeah.
There you go.
Well, man, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Yeah,
and
appreciate you spending some time.
Hopefully you'll come back and see us one of these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoyed it
in the future. So, guys, thank y'all so much for watching or listening to our podcast today. We really appreciate y'all. Y'all make sure and go and like and subscribe and all the things so you can see each one of our episodes that we put out. Y'all have a great day. Thanks.